Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So today I'm going to talk about why the left can't meme and how that is connected to their destruction of entertainment that we see around us everywhere today. And partly I want to talk about that because I see memes as being really the new form of political cartoons, which of course is the precursor to sequential art. And I'm concerned with sequential art because I write and produce graphic novels. So understanding the audience and why they think in certain ways is very important to what I do. Speaking of which, there are 2 links in the description and the pinned comment for my 3 graphic novels, 2 superhero graphic novels, and 1 return to form for low fantasy, an homage to Conan the Barbarian called Crom the Destroyer. These are books which go back to the merit-based way of creating a story and the art. You're looking at some of the beautiful art for those books in the background, and I concentrate always on the idea of a traditional hero. So if any of that sounds or looks appealing to you at all, click on one of those links in the description or the pinned comment and go on over and see if one of my graphic novels is for you. But back to my topic. So this is sort of in the news over the last week because Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who's most probably going to be running for president of the United States in 4 to 8 years, basically signed a bill which is trying to restrict people's First Amendment rights of free speech. And many are saying it's just an attempt to ban memes because the left can't meme. And I would say that's a perfectly rational way of describing it. Now, I'm sure Gavin Newsom probably had this bill tucked under his desk for years and years and just used the opportunity that arose to sign it into law. But the opportunity was Elon Musk retweeted a faux Kamala Harris ad done by a YouTuber called Mr. Reagan, which honestly, I'm glad to see he got the boost because I've been subscribed to Mr. Reagan for quite some time now. But the point is that Mr. Reagan actually posted this faux ad, which he created with AI, and then said, this is a parody. It's right there in his post. It's a parody ad. Then Elon Musk retweeted it, and the left is going insane because Elon Musk gave this thing much more traction than Mr. Reagan ever would have got himself. So they're saying this is disinformation, and they're going to clamp down on disinformation, specifically having to do with AI-generated content. Now, I think that there needs to be a discussion around what kind of AI-generated content you can legally get away with, and I think the courts are actually determining that right now. But if you're trying to clamp down on what is a parody, what is essentially a very long political cartoon, then yeah, you're going after memes. And as I said, I'm concerned with this because I honestly believe that memes are the new form of cartooning. They're basically at the stage of mid to late 1800s political cartoons at this point, but those mid to late 1800s political cartoons developed into cartooning, usually within the newspapers, which then led into the funnies page, which then led into more and more forms of sequential art, which led into the creation of comic books and graphic novels, which is what I work on. And I've decried in the past the fact that people are losing their sequential art literacy because they no longer are exposed to newspapers and the funny pages, which are the basic things which get people into understanding what sequential art is. But really, there just needs to be a change of focus on how do people understand memes, and that becomes their new way of understanding sequential art. And yes, even a simple picture with or without a caption is an illustration which leads into understanding a moment in time as it evokes a secondary thought within your mind. We can look at things like the Far Side cartoon or Wick's World or Family Circus. Yeah, it's basically the same thing in an odd sort of way. Now, before moving on, I want to pull on that thread just for a moment longer and talk about the fact that I've covered the comic book industry, specifically focusing on Marvel Comics for the last 6 years or so, listening to the podcast, especially coming out of Marvel, listening to most specifically women who are taking over positions within Marvel Comics. And I've done a number of videos, older videos now, where they talk about how they got into comics. And they would always repeat the pattern in a general way. I'll give you an example of the second in command at Marvel Comics for over 10 years, but really this is a general pattern. She said, well, first I read the funnies in the newspaper, and then I watched the X-Men cartoon, and then I started reading some of my brother's comic books, and that's how I got into comics. And I would always shake my head because, you know, that the idea is, yes, they read funnies in the newspaper. Her statement was she read Calvin and Hobbes, and whoop-de-doo that you watch X-Men. It was just a thing on television, and television had very little content back then as compared to now. And the fact that your brother had some comic books and you saw them laying around doesn't give you the experience to understand sequential art as it concerns North American comic books. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Now, reading of those funnies in the newspaper does give you a basis, I'll admit, but that basis is completely misunderstood, and that's what I want to get into. Basis being a fundamental understanding, a fundamental literacy of how to understand illustrations, and from that sequential art, and from that storytelling in general. So, as I said, I'm concerned with the idea of how people interact with memes because of how I see it informing people and their understanding of sequential art. And I ran across something not too long ago, which I think really helped me understand a little bit of what is going on here. It was someone doing a video about the fact that women in particular don't seem to grasp the concept of what the point of view meme is. The point of view meme as a format is you as an individual taking a picture of what you're looking at and then putting a caption on it. Pretty simple. Yet women don't, for the most part, understand how this works. Why? Because what they do is they turn the camera around and take a picture of themselves looking at the thing, which you should be taking a picture of, and then putting a caption on that. And they think that's a point of view meme, but it's not. And they simply don't understand that. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about all women here, but I would say more women than not. And what is going on? Well, it has to do with a basic concept within the female mind, wherein they are always the center of attention. So if they have a camera in their hand and they're going to take a picture of something, well, that picture needs to center on them. And they think this is a point of view meme because, again, from their point of view, they are always the center. Now, looking at why women think that, or a majority of women think that, is actually really telling. Number one, you can understand to some extent why women think this way. Why? Because women, especially as girls, are treated much different from boys because of what women can provide, how they provide it, which, by the way, is essentially being able to birth children, and the fact that they are, on the whole, less capable of defending themselves than their male counterparts. If you have a family household where you have girls and boys, brothers and sisters, the brothers are going to get kicked out of the door. The girls are going to be treated like daddy's little princess. It's just the way it is. Again, because of the physical capabilities, both in what they cannot provide and what they can provide within their lives. And so they get used to being the center of attention because they're given more attention than, say, their male counterparts, which are their brothers. So this gives women a skewed, I would say, idea of themselves being the center of attention. But in addition to that, other men, besides their fathers, also contribute to the fact that they're the center of attention. Why? Because guys, again, are typically kicked out the door and told, go make something of yourself, which contributes to a mindset within a guy of, okay, I don't have value yet. I have to build up that value. Therefore, not everything is about me. But at the same time, since guys have this mindset, if they have to look at something other than themselves as the center of their focus, they really like to put that focus on something that is pleasant. And what is the most common pleasant thing that human beings would find around them? Well, it's other human beings. That is to say, guys focus their attention and center beautiful women within their view as well, because it's a pleasant thing to look at. And this then feeds back into the loop of women believing that they're the center of attention, because to some extent, guys do make them the center of attention. But A, it's a false sense of security as to why they have this center of attention, which I'll get into, which B gives women an inflated sense of self-importance, which then C leads into an inability to understand basic things around them because they just expect things to go their way because they're the center of attention. Why do they need to bother figuring out how things work? So let me go over a entertainment example of this to bring it back to entertainment, give you a real world connection to this entire thing. Actually, I'll give you two examples of this. The first one, very short, the second one a little longer. The first example is this woman who worked for Marvel Comics. Now, she did covers for X-23, which is the female version of Wolverine. You have this character. Nobody likes this character. Nobody wants this character. The only reason why this character exists is because they wanted to have a secondary Wolverine. But they've been pushing this character over and over again. They just tried it again a couple of months ago. But the point is, this woman who was drawing the covers for the initial run of the X-23 Wolverine series did an interview. I think it was a panel at one of the Comic-Cons. And she talked about, first of all, how she did not like sequential art. And I thought to myself, well, that's kind of funny. you work in comic books, that's sequential art. But then I said, okay, you're an illustrator, you just do covers, you concentrate on that. Then she got into what she focuses on when she concentrates on making a cover. And guess what it was? Well, again, she focused on, as she said, showing women feeling their feelings. I'm not joking. This is not me taking it out of context. This is not me putting words in her mouth. That's what she thought superhero comic covers were about, to show women feeling their feelings. And of course, the woman, which was the center of this comic, the female Wolverine, so called, was the center of attention for all of these covers. Her, or the miniature version of her, because there was another clone of her clone. But anyways, so that's example number one. Example number two is very similar. It is the fact that one of the massive bombs within entertainment, certainly within science fiction and fantasy, and more specifically comic book connected entertainment over the last couple of years, was that awful She-Hulk show that came out. Now, under the parameters that I was just talking about, let's look at why that thing exists to begin with and why it exists in the format that it does. Very briefly, where does She-Hulk come from? Well, She-Hulk comes from the fact that long and ever ago, there used to be a Hulk television show, which did very well, and so Marvel Comics wanted to produce more and more Hulk content. They came up with She-Hulk because that's what comics do. They just repeat a winning pattern over and over again, and that's the basic premise of where the character came from to begin with. Was there an outpouring of demand for a female Hulk? No. The people who ran Marvel Comics just said, I know, let's create a female version of this character that does well and is in the people's minds because of television, and that's where the original run of She-Hulk came from. Now, eventually that buzz around Hulk and that television show died down, and so did any interest within that comic. But that comic was revamped in the 80s by John Byrne. I'll put some of his art from his She-Hulk run in the background, but John Byrne is a spectacular artist, and he can draw spectacularly beautiful women. So how in the world did John Byrne get to revamp this character that failed before? Well, he revamped the character by doing the exact thing that I just talked about. He centered a beautiful woman, which was She-Hulk, which he could draw beautifully over and over and over again, almost in every panel within the book. The majority of panels, and definitely the covers for his She-Hulk run, always concentrate on making She-Hulk the center of attention, and if she's not the center of the panel, she's always off to the side so that there is a little draw of your attention from her as center, but not a whole lot. And that's how he sold the book. Not because he was trying to reach out to some female audience, but because he knew that the majority of the audience for comic books is male, and I've gone over reasons for that dozens of times. And he understood, at the very least instinctually, that what guys want to look at as the center of their attention is a beautiful woman. Therefore, do that. And if you know anything about that series, you know that as soon as John Byrne left that series and you had other artists who didn't understand that basic concept come in, sales just plummeted. And they had to rehire him as the artist for She-Hulk in order to bring the numbers back up, but then eventually he had to leave again, and the whole thing just fell apart. Why? Well, as someone who bought that entire series off the spinner rack, I would say it's because those other artists didn't understand the fundamental reason why guys bought that book, which was to center their attention on an extremely beautiful woman. Now, she was a superhero, and she was funny to some extent, all of that, but yeah, guys just want to look at something pleasant. And either the artist who came on couldn't do as good a job as John Byrne, or didn't understand that basic concept, and then the entire thing tanked, and it had to be canceled. Now, after that, She-Hulk floated around as a secondary character in different ways, and the next real push of this character by Marvel Comics was a She-Hulk series written by Marika Tamaki. And this, by the way, is the series within which most of the concepts of the She-Hulk television show came from. Problem is, Marika Tamaki and Marvel, at the time she was writing this entire thing, completely misunderstood the reason why She-Hulk existed. Not to mention the fact that Marika Tamaki is one of those people who needs to center herself as she supposes, subject of a point of view meme, as it were. How do we know this? Well, she also wrote I Am Not Starfire. And if you look at that character, I Am Not Starfire, it looks like Marika Tamaki. So it's a self-insert. And to some extent, her version of She-Hulk is also a self-insert. It's a woman who mopes around, watches cooking shows, eats a lot, and complains. And, oh, by the way, has an uncontrollable rage which she gets to use and be justified about it because, oh well, life is so hard for a woman. And yes, this is one of the statements made by the people who made the She-Hulk show, that they were showing this rage, this female rage, which was justified at the world because women are treated so harshly. What does so harshly mean? It means the fact, once again, they don't understand the basic reason why this character exists. This character exists because guys like to look at pretty things. But Marika Tamaki and the people who made the She-Hulk show believe that that character existed because people wanted to center their focus on a woman. And they would accept anything that came from that woman, when nothing could be further from the truth. Because they are people who, again, don't understand things like the point of view meme. They don't realize why women are centered, A, within their own minds, and B, to some extent, within our society. They just don't. Now, quite honestly, I would say I would love if people practiced the actual true virtue of justice, rendering to everyone what is their due, the basic rendering being dignity to other people. But that's not the way the world really works. You got to struggle to actually do that. And I say that because it would be great if men wanted to look at women because they wanted to some extent, acknowledge the dignity that is there. But that's not why guys do that. Guys do it because they're pretty. That's it. They're easy on the eyes. And again, guys are kicked out the door and taught, don't concentrate on yourself, concentrate on something else. And if they have to concentrate on something else, they want to look at something pretty, look at something pleasant. That's about it. But again, these women are so self-centered that they substitute in their minds the idea that men want to look at women because they value them as a whole. Nope, sorry. They want to look at women because they value a part of them, which is their beauty. And again, not saying that's the way it should be, just saying that's the way it is. Now, 2 points off of that. Number one, this is the basic difference between the worth of females and the worth of males within our society. Female worth is based around youth and beauty. Therefore, they start off life being extremely valuable, and as they get older, they become less and less valuable. Again, not saying it's the way it should be, just the way it is. But for guys, their value is concentrated on what they can do. Therefore, they start off life with nothing, very poor, and have to build up their wealth over time, building up skills, and to some extent, yes, possessions and things like that. And as I referenced earlier, this is part of the reason why women don't understand they're not really the center of attention. Because if you start life in this world with a lot of value and think that's just the norm, and because of that norm, you're given things at the very least easier than a lot of people around you, and sometimes given things on a silver platter, that gives you no incentive to understand how things work. Because things just work out for you, why bother going through all the steps necessary to understand why things work? And as such, as they grow older, first of all, they don't understand because they haven't put in the work, because why should they? They don't need to understand how things work. They can just get stuff. And as they begin to decrease within the value of the mind of society, they just don't understand why exactly that is, and then they just blame everyone else around them. It's the patriarchy, etc., etc. And this leads into number two, which is a complete misunderstanding of why guys actually buy such products. And for that, I want to give you again a couple of examples. If you've been around the internet at all in your life, I'm sure you would probably have run across a video where a woman, again, is centering herself. She's talking to the camera in a vlog fashion while she puts on her makeup. I don't know about you, but I find that the most disconcerting thing in the world. Why? Because it's kind of like watching how sausages are made. If you actually saw how sausages are made, you would never want to eat sausages again. It's funny, this actually happened to me in my own life several times. Number one, I had a girlfriend who worked in a donut shop, and she explained to me how the donuts were made, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to eat donuts anymore. And when I was young, for a couple of weeks, I worked in a bakery, and I had to quit for several reasons. One of them being, I was just disgusted about what actually went on there, and thought to myself, if I ever want to buy baked bread ever again, I got to leave this place. Once you see how the thing is made, it's like, yeah, no, I don't want that anymore. So just to let you know, girls, women, if you're out there, don't do those kinds of videos. It's kind of like, and I hate to do this because I don't like to be that guy who takes everything and references an old television show in order to explain it, but it's like the episode of Seinfeld where Jerry dates a nudist and then he has to break up with her. Why? Well, he explains to George, sure, it's nice to look at her within some points of the day, but not always. And then he says, have you ever seen someone in the nude have a sneezing fit? It's not attractive. But again, this gets back to my central point, which is These women are taking videos of themselves as they do this thing which they think of as normal and they do every day. And so why not show it out to the world? And guys are looking at it going, I don't want to see that. Which basically brings up the dichotomy of women thinking much too much of themselves in the fact that they believe everyone actually wants to hear what they say and don't understand that when you present things in a very pleasant way, i.e., after you have all your makeup on and are trying to be beautiful, you actually get much better engagement than the before, and certainly much better engagement than the during video where you go from one to the other, because they don't understand that guys center them because of their beauty, not because they want to hear what they have to say. Once again, not saying it's the way it should be, saying it's the way it is. Combine that with the fact that you have a self-centered political ideology within your quote-unquote progressive movement, which equates acceptance of you at any moment with acceptance of your ideas, then you get into the reason why you have things like the SheHulk television show and other quote-unquote progressive television shows, especially ones that are centered around women, because they believe that society actually wants to hear what they have to say. When the majority of society, and especially the majority of men, only want to hear what they have to say because they get to look at something beautiful. That's it. And this also plays into the quote-unquote progressive entertainment mindset of how they're going to capture an entire new audience and then make money. Once again, I go back to a line from a Marvel podcast where they were talking about what comics were in today's market. The quote was, "We have the kicking of the butts down. Now we have to concentrate on, can you be a good friend?" And the entire conversation was based around the idea that, yeah, we already got the guys captured. They're already going to buy all of these books. We just now need to bring in this female audience, and then we're going to double our sales and things are going to work great. And this was all, again, centered around the idea that Marvel Comics was no longer a boy brand, which, again, I did multiple videos on early on in my channel. This drawing in of the new audience never works. And it never works because it completely misunderstands why half of the audience is there, which is the male half of the audience. Again, they're trying to attract the female audience, and they think the male audience is going to stay while they go after the female part. And they think that because they think the male audience is there because they respect what women have to say. No, they're there because they want to look at something pretty. And they'll listen to what you have to say if you're presenting it in a pretty package. But the moment you step away from that, the moment you begin to show how the sausages are made, the moment you begin to believe the delusion that you actually are the center of attention because you deserve it, yeah, the entire thing goes out the window because guys will just walk away. This also explains why it's taking so long to right the ship, to get back to some sane kind of entertainment. It's because the people in control just don't understand what's going on. Again, if they're so stuck in their own minds that they can't even understand something as simple as a point of view meme because they believe themselves to be of much more worth than they actually are. And with that, you gotta realize the reason why they think this way is because they don't even understand the basic concept of point of view. Take that and magnify it 100 times and you get the entertainment industry of today. And why the female people in control, and again, did entire videos about executives at these companies saying, yes, we need to have more females in control. We need to hold the door open for them so that they can come in and take our positions. So again, why the females in control and the female presenting men, because they're just effeminate men who think in the exact same way. Example of this from Marvel Comics would be Cena Grace. Once again, who is a writer who is so self-centered, he took Iceman and made him into a self-insert, and after writing 3 iterations of the book, confessed that he still didn't understand how the character's powers worked. Why? Because it was all about him. And again, female presenting man. So they're run straight through from the people who are the so-called talent to the people in control, and none of them understand why this isn't working. And in addition, it explains why they hate merit-based systems so much. Why? Because a merit-based system is a male-centered idea. That is to say, it centers on the way that men think. You don't get a freebie from the beginning. No, you got to build up who you are and what you do and your experience. And then when you have all of those things put together, then you have enough merit for me to consider that you're actually worthy of this position. That's the way a guy thinks. And why is this tied in with why the left can't meme? Well, again, if you look at the makeup of the left, especially the quote-unquote progressive left, it's a majority women. And in addition to that, feminine men, but that's the majority of the people on the left. Quite honestly, people have studied this. They realize that if women could not vote, we would get nothing but conservative government after conservative government after conservative government. Why? Because that's the way guys think. And again, how is this connected with entertainment? Well, the entire idea of the quote-unquote progressive mindset is everything is political, and that includes your entertainment. Not only your entertainment, really, but existence itself. Again, did a video about Marika Tamaki, who I was just talking about, the creator of the new SheHulk, which is the basic pattern which the television show was based off of, where she comes right out and says, human beings are essentially nothing. They're just a collection of mimicry. And what's the basic mindset behind that way of thinking? It's the quote-unquote progressive idea that everything is political. Even who you are as a human being is because of social construction. That's it. So if everything, even you yourself, and reality is built up as a social construct, what do you think your entertainment is? In the minds of these people, your entertainment is also a social construct, which then gets run through with social commentary, political commentary. And this is, quite honestly, not something new. I like to go back every once in a while to those lines from Plato within, I think it's the 4th or 5th book of his Laws, where he talks about what he calls the greatest evil. And he says it's an inflated sense of self-worth. It's people who value themselves and what they possess above what is true. And that is exactly at the heart of why the left can't meme. That's exactly at the heart of why a majority of women can't understand things like the point of view meme. That is at the exact heart of why these people continually destroy different forms of entertainment in this bizarre and almost insane hope that they're going to A, create a better society, and B, do it easily because they're going to have this giant audience just glom on to what they're doing. That's what they truly believe. Again, listening to these podcasts from Marvel over and over again for the last few years, they genuinely believe, as they produce these quote-unquote progressive forms of entertainment, that they just need to connect with their audience in the right way because there's a giant audience out there waiting to eat the entire thing up. And it all just comes down to an inflated sense of self-worth. They believe themselves to be the center of the universe rather than what is true. And as such, lack even the most basic comprehension of how and why things work. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. Also, don't forget, there are 2 links in the description and the pinned comment for my 3 graphic novels that focus on a merit-based way of creating story and art centered around the idea of a traditional virtuous hero. So if any of that looks or sounds appealing to you at all, click on one of those links in the description or the pinned comment and go on over and order a copy of one of my graphic novels today. All right, I'll leave it there. I'll see you later. Bye.